Welcome to Food Talk for Health. Here is your host, Tonia King.
Joining me today is Dr. Michelle Perro, founder of GMOScience.org, co-author of What's Making Our Children Sick. How are you today, Dr. Perro?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Your new project with the new MDS is very interesting. Moms, doctors, and scientists. I know you've been involved in trying to keep children healthy for many, many years. You have quite a varied background. Give me a little bit of detail on the latest project that you're working on.
So this new MDs was birthed actually many years ago when Zen Honeycutt from Moms Across America and the head of a genetics department in the UK, Dr. Michael Antoniou, we went on tour together. And it was around 2015 in Australia, New Zealand, talking about ending GMOs and pesticides. So we've been at it for a while. So then that project fell asleep. And then, I thought we need to resurrect this combination of clinician to parent to scientist. And then I rebirthed the new MDs with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Stephanie Seneff, and Zen Honeycutt again. She's on sabbatical presently. And we did this podcast. And what we're trying to do is explain how this all works, bring it together from all these varied perspectives in a digestible way, but yet science-based. And it's a live show, and we cover topics that perhaps a lot of other folks don't want to touch. And we've been doing it now for 2 years, once a month, and it's free, we make it accessible, all that good stuff. But it's bridging the gaps and allowing people to weigh in and ask questions live. That was our plan.
That's exciting. And you're talking about facts, real facts.
We do. And what I love so much about it is that we can bring the parent perspective. Stephanie can break down the science like no other. And what I try to do is give pragmatic, practical, clinical tips that are useful in everyday lives. I've been, as a pediatrician, you talk to families and you have to take complicated concepts and make them understandable for people who are not, physicians, scientists. This stuff gets complicated, especially in the realm of genetics. It's not straightforward.
I'm wondering if it actually starts on the farm when you're talking about all the different levels of contaminants in our food supply.
So farms the healthiest kids come from farms, but we're talking about organic regenerative farms, not the farms that are, doused in chemical farming. And that is the majority of America. But kids who grow up on organic regenerative farms have lower levels of, for example, something we call atopic diseases, which include asthma, 1 in 6 to 1 in 9 kids, eczema, 60% of babies, and environmental allergies. Oh my gosh. One little patient of mine said, who had environmental agencies, she said, well, Dr. Perro, everybody has allergies. And that's what she thought. Sick was the new normal. It was so common that it was the way of life. That's how we've normalized illness. But in chemical farming, we know that's not true. Because so when you eat a GMO, which all our kids are eating, you don't just eat glyphosate-based herbicides, Roundup. You eat at least 6 pesticides, including some like fungicides that are even more toxic than Roundup. And there is a toxic overload in our kids. We call it allostatic load, and they can't handle it. And their little detox pathways are not as advanced as ours, and it's causing a tsunami of illness.
How did you start to include the Girl Scout cookies in your most recent research?
So I was inspired. Moms Across America has been doing food testing as well as many other wonderful groups for many years. And several years ago, I helped her with with the moms with this project looking at school lunches. When I saw the results of the school lunches with all of them containing toxic metals, I thought, oh my God. That kind of pivoted me into studying infant formula. It's a long story, Tonia, but it was infant formula, and we looked at those for toxic metals last year. But then we came up, a group of us, there were 5 of us, came up with the ideas like, what about Girl Scouts? How are their cookies? And if we did find contaminants, which we knew we would, because everything that is not organic is contaminated, we said, oh my gosh, they are such a force for young people that we could pair with them to create part of our organic regenerative movement. We were totally altruistic when we started this project, and all of us were Girl Scouts. Hence, there we go. We fundraise. We study 25 cookies. 40 is statistically significant, but Tonya, we paid for those cookies ourselves and with some a little bit of funding, and it's expensive to test. And this is where the FDA has failed their job as regulators. But let me put that aside. So I chose three different states because I know they are some of the most toxic. Iowa is one of the leading states for pesticide use in the US and has the second highest rate of cancer in the US. Louisiana, because it is the recipient of all the Mississippi River farming chemicals, and my home state of California. And we were shocked to find that all the cookies contained toxic metals and they all had glyphosate. Now they had different levels of metals and different levels of glyphosate, but and its toxic byproduct, AMPA. So we reached out to the Girl Scouts and said, hey, maybe we compare. What an opportunity. We weren't looking to take out scouts or do any kind of thing like that. And they just didn't respond. And we sent several requests for a meeting. We were thoroughly transparent on what we done and why we did it and what we're trying to do. Crickets. So we released our data and it kind of took off and it's a lot of attention. And we're hoping attention for change. So people said, you're taking down the Girl Scouts. That was one negative comment. I said, no, give the money to the Scouts. Just don't buy the cookies and tell them why. And we even made a new badge, a regenerative organic badge for them. We said, we're in it to win it. So that was kind of how that all happened.
I wonder if it will make change. I wonder if it really will, make somebody take another look.
That is our goal. Our kids are not faring well. I mean, I could sit here and quote you stats all day on, what the illnesses facing our children. It's not good. They're sicker than ever. And so if we were doing such a good job, why is illness among our kids, particularly neurodevelopmental disorders, skyrocketing? They initially didn't respond to our study, but then it made some airwaves on some big podcasters, and now they've been kind of launching back. But even after the study, we didn't have an opportunity to dialogue. Our mission is to make organic regenerative food conventional food. That's our mission. There is no child in America, and this is also a social justice issue, that you're being eating chemically contaminated food. They can't handle it. It's not healthy. And our food, not only does it contain these contaminants, it's nutritionally bereft. It has nothing in it. The school lunches, those kids might as well have been eating cardboard. So our kids have nutritional deficiencies, particularly those B vitamins, the minerals, zinc, magnesium, calcium, copper, and their biologic functions don't operate, particularly neurologically, but it's actually all of them.
Do you have a way to help parents find more information on how they can make some changes to their kids' diets?
Yes, we do. So we have on my website, for example, I have a whole parent tabs with all kinds of information. My and lots of our colleagues who do this work, Moms Across America does, Momavation does, Food Babe does, Carol Grivet and her show, Food Integrity Now. And so we're all promoting this. As a matter of fact, I have a new book coming out. I just learned next year. I was hoping it was this year. It's for parents. It's a sequel called Making Our Children Well, based on nutrition and homeopathy, which is one of my favorite healing modalities for children, especially. And that will be out next year. And so it is literally a guide for parents on the how to. But there are so many references and so much information there. And also, I will be running a course and teaching parents nutrition and homeopathy in an upcoming course that I'm putting together with nutritionist Lady Carla Davis. So we have so much stuff out there, but the CDC, the FDA, the USDA is not helping parents. That information is outdated. And unfortunately, mainstream medicine is not trained in nutrition. I got 2 hours of nutrition in medical school. This is not how mainstream physicians are trained. So we're asking them to do something they're not trained in doing. So if parents are struggling, holistic nutritionists, not dietitians, can really help assist a child and the family to a path to better eating.
That does seem to be the problem. You aren't getting the education you need right from the get-go. But you would think that maybe by now, in this day and age, maybe it would be a little bit better. But I guess it's not.
Not well, pharma, big pharma, it's just all big ag, big pharma, big
Yeah,
pharma
yeah.
has a tight control, as we know, over the education of physicians. For example, we get a year of pharmacology and we get 2 hours in nutrition. I checked recently, about 6 months ago, whether this is still true, and indeed it is still true. So when parents want help from physicians on eating, it's not what we're trained to do. Now, I sought a ton of training outside of, obviously, I've been at this a while, a couple of, well, 43 years. It's been a while. So here are parents, they're paying their insurance into a system that cannot provide them the assistance they need. And for those parents who get to a dietitian, dietitians are also regulated by lobbyists. And dietitians run the party line. So they're also not talking what we're talking about is organic regenerative food, how to heal with food, let food be thy medicine. Hippocrates, not me. And so we have a medical healthy mismatch. It's not that physicians are bad people. They're just being asked to do something that they don't know how to do. So if you break a leg, sure, you want to see your physician. However, if your child has gluten and dairy sensitivities and you want to go organic and make sure they get a nutritionally adequate sustenance, it's not going to be medicine. There is the frustration for many.
Even with kids, because I know you're dealing with pediatrics, are supplements also involved in the whole holistic approach?
Oh, I'd have to say, indeed, they are. 20 years ago, I did not routinely recommend multivitamins and probiotics to kids. Now I do. I would prefer that children receive all their nutrient density from food, but that's not possible because our food over the past, I'd say 50 years, the nutrient levels have gone down 40 to 75%. So you need to eat so much more broccoli, even if you do eat well, to get the same sulforaphane as you would, decades ago. So kids just can't eat enough. A 2-year-old's tummy is just not that large.
Right.
So we have to supplement with multivitamins and I like probiotics. However, not all supplements are created equal. So now we have to teach parents which supplements are the cleanest and what to look for in a good supplement. Parents need PhDs and so how to go shopping. So this is a big problem, and I spent a lot of time researching supplements that I recommend for families. I'm going to put it on my website. People keep asking me this. I'm going to put which brands I like.
We're talking with Dr. Michelle Perro. And Dr. Perro, what age group are we talking when you're talking about starting, young children to eat well and think about a holistic and whole foods approach?
Where I start is prenatally, Tonya.
Great.
Yeah. So we do a prenatal detox with mom and dad, and then we get mom eating well because the foods that mom eats during pregnancy, research has shown that babies will favor those foods she consumed. So, for example, if mom is consuming alcohol during pregnancy, hopefully not, right?
Right.
Not a good choice. Babies will have a preferred taste for alcohol, if you can believe that.
Wow.
I know. So moms need to be starting those veggies, those cruciferous veggies prenatally and not doing, chips and, Coke, please. So I did eat a lot of potato chips. I'm full disclosure here, 30 years ago, I did binge on quite a few potato chips, but I don't think I would do that now. So live and learn. Um,
Right.
so eat well. Postnatally, please breastfeed. And ladies who are breastfeeding really need a really good nutrition. Lots of clean water. That includes water filters, particularly in our state of California. We have unfortunately contaminated waters and fluoride. Oh gosh, Tonya, we could do a show just on fluoride.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so moms are taking prenatal vitamins. So if they continue their prenatals postnatal, they now have postnatal vitamins, babies will be getting those supplements also in the breast milk. So breastfeeding is so ideal. But so these patterns, we have to teach our children literally from conception how to eat well. And every American needs to learn how to eat well. And needs to be taught at school, at home, in your community, your religious center, wherever it is. Don't bring cupcakes to the soccer game, folks. Bring orange slices or tangerines, and kids like it just as much. So we have to do a cultural shift, an educational shift, and a community shift. Everything has to be toward a new way of eating and get rid of the toxic foods.
That's really what is important to think about is what you are feeding your kids.
And get rid of those kids menus at restaurants. This is hard for a lot of folks because we've been raised on KFC and Taco Bell and all
Right.
that. And when those foods first came out in the 60s, by the way, KFC was the first, followed by McDonald's. Moms were just starting to go back into the workforce. So they said, "Hey, mom, you had a hard day at work. Let KFC take over for you." And initially, those foods weren't as toxic as they are now. They've gotten much worse. So we need to get rid of the drive-through mentality. 46% of our income is on eating out, and we're not eating out always healthy. I know, it's just hard to imagine. That's where a lot of our income is going. Well, for example, we have an organic drive-through, two of them, and where I live. It's called Amy's. Shout out to Amy's. You get a organic veggie burger, which is one of my favorites at a not bad price.
Wow. And
So
a drive-through?
a drive-through
That's
organic
so cool.
is so cool. Not enough of them. And get rid of those kids menus. Kids do not need the chicken fingers and the yucky food. Give them adult food, but in kids sizes and kids flavors. I would do that too. I get rid of the kids menu. They don't
So
have it in Europe. Actually, European kids are healthier, but the Europeans are relaxing their standards on GMOs. Pesticides are country by country. GMOs are country by country, but it's still healthier fare than the US.
let's go back to the Girl Scout cookies for a minute. They're not all made in the same place. Is that right? But do the initial products come from the same place as far as these
No.
farms? Give me the scoop on that and what you
Yeah,
found.
that was interesting. We did some research on that, and two different bakers baked the cookies, but they source the ingredients locally. So the ingredients being sourced in Maine are different than those we're sourced in California. But there's ABC bakers and little bakers bake them, and even from macronutrient levels, they were not actually equal in terms of protein, carbs, and fats. So that's what usually nutrition says. Well, we look at proteins, fats, and carbs. But we need to look at micronutrients, not just macronutrients. So we found that's why we would have tested all 50 states cookies if we could. So the differences were present. They weren't huge, but they were not all the same cookie. So the cookies were the most toxic from Louisiana, and they were cleanest from California. But hold on, Tonya, not by much. And the Thin Mints were the highest rates of glyphosate and its
Oh,
toxic product, AMPA, and there's a reason for that. And the peanut butter cookies had the highest rates of toxic metals.
wow.
And yes, and what people may not know is that mint is a highly sprayed crop. And the EPA, every time they spray more Roundup or glyphosate-based herbicides because the weeds are 75% resistant in the US to glyphosate. And they keep adding more toxic herbicides and stacking these GMO traits. The only reason why you eat a GMO is so that when they spray these herbicides, the plant doesn't die. It doesn't increase yield. It doesn't use less water. The plants are not healthier. The nutritional value is lower. So EPA and their infinite wisdom keeps raising the acceptable limit of glyphosate in the mint. And so now that the mints now are allowed like 200 parts per million. I think that's the number. 200 parts per million is huge amount of glyphosate. Dr. Antonio, the gentleman I mentioned earlier, in a study of his, he showed zero point 0.1 parts per billion, yes, by a factor of a
Wow.
thousand, caused non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, now called MAFLD, which is a fatty liver affecting 1 in 4, 1 in 3 Americans.
It's all hard to believe. Do you think they'll ever go organic?
Well, that's the push. I'm hoping every chapter mom, every Girl Scout goes to their chapter leaders and the main organization and say, this is what we want. There is a story from 2010 of a little Girl Scout who wanted to do just this. And they would said they would meet with her. And you can find her story. I actually have it. I didn't include it in the article, but it's accessible. She went to New York to meet with them and they gaslit her. They didn't meet with her. It's awful. It's an awful story. So there was one little girl who led the charge. So they weren't receptive then, but maybe they'll be receptive now because there is awakening in America globally. And I'm hoping parents are getting the message that they have to be part of the solution. We need every parent to go to where they spend their money and say, no, this is not what we want for our kids because moms spend 85% of the household budget. So if every mom says to those organizations and those companies, no, we will not use your product. We're going to boycott your product until you give us an excellent, healthy product for our kids. Maybe these companies will shift. It's called an economic tipping point, Tonya. Companies do shift when we put the pressure on.
Dr. Perro, you are really making a difference. How exciting. We're talking with Dr. Michelle Perro about the new MDs, mothers, doctors, and scientists really making a strong impact on getting all the horrible things out of our food supply, especially with Girl Scout cookies. My goodness. Now, what about your book, What's Making Our Children Sick? Is that still available?
It is. It was published in 2017, and that was focused on my patients. My co-author, Dr. Adams, is a brilliant medical anthropologist, and we wrote that book together. And so she came to my office. Initially, when we wrote that book, she didn't believe it. Until she talked about this, she said, "No way, Michelle, what you're doing, you're saying the Mayo Clinic and Harvard and are wrong, and you're right." I said, "I am. Come to my clinic." She came to my clinic. She said she sat in with 20 of my patients. After she saw about the 15th autistic kid, she said, "Oh my God." When I changed their diets, now a lot of children took a lot more than dietary changes, but the first thing I did was put people on an organic diet. First thing. And what would happen is my favorite story is I had a little autistic family, two kids, autistic. Dad had chronic renal failure. He was headed for dialysis like his mom and brother. He lived in the Central Valley of California, which is a heavily sprayed region. And all he did was change his diet to organic. I did all sorts of things with the other kids, and the mom. 9 months later, the dad regained 80% of his kidney function just going organic. Yes,
That's
glyphosate, uh, GMOs, glyphosate, Roundup, all those awful herbicides are causing a massive epidemic of kidney disease, particularly in Central America, Sri Lanka, in countries where they use a lot of this, and particularly men who are the field workers. So Dad goes to our medical center, it was UCSF, and his nephrologist said, "We must have misdiagnosed you. Impossible." That's what he was told. 12 years of a misdiagnosis. Geez, well, that's not impressive.
crazy.
It's
Crazy.
crazy. It's crazy. He regained his kidney function, preventing him going on dialysis. This is my most dramatic story.
And doesn't that make you feel so good to
It
know that your suggestion made a difference?
100%. Kids' lives are devastated when they're sick and their parents are sick. It's not just the kid, the whole family unit is suffering. And if there is a kid who's well in the family, they suffer too because all the attention goes to the sick kid. And dogs are getting cancer. The rate of lymphomas in dogs under 10, I think two-thirds of dogs,
Oh my
because they
goodness.
get the worst end products of the food system loaded with pesticides and GMOs. What are the main illnesses that we're witnessing, Tonya?
Exactly.
The most alarming are for me as a pediatrician are the what we call the neurodevelopmental disorders or neurocognitive disorders. And those include things like autism, ADHD. People are familiar with these terms now, way too
Sure.
familiar, fortunately. Learning challenges, every type of defensiveness. You may have heard of sensory defensiveness, oral defensiveness, auditory processing disorders, visual processing, big group. So now in California, 1 in 22 children is on the autistic spectrum. When I was a young buck resident at Bellevue, NYU, it was like about 1 in 10,000. So that's my lifetime. And so this is the real pandemic. It's a global issue as well. All the allergic-based diseases, which I already mentioned, skyrocketing. Obesity and metabolic disorders in children. Children are now obese at a rate of 1 in 5 to 1 in 3, depending on what state they're from, their ethnicity, and their income level. Autoimmune disease is skyrocketing kids. Autoimmunity in kids was unheard heard of in the first 20 years of my practice. And now it's unfortunately common. And thyroid disease. Thyroid disease in boys, again, unheard of. And now I've seen little boys with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. That was a common autoimmune disease of the thyroid. Usually women in their 40s and 50s got, now I've seen it in a 9-year-old boy.
Oh,
So it is all diseases, all ethnicities, all income levels. It's not just the poor or, a certain group.
right.
Absolutely not. This is affecting all our children. Teachers are now reporting that they are unable to teach their classrooms because of so many learning challenges and children with special needs, and they have something called IEPs. And I saw that 20 years ago in my own kids' class when she was in primary school, and I helped the teacher. Half the class had special needs at that time. And I went, oh my God. I woke up in around 2000 when I first learned about GMOs. So it's a wide spectrum of illnesses. Children, infants are being medicated with antipsychotic drugs.
Oh,
I've seen 3-year-old children placed on ADHD drugs, which are stimulants, as young at 3 years old. They're not even in school yet. So when you have disruption to the gut via these GMOs and pesticides, there's something called the gut-brain axis, and they literally affect brain functioning. The gut brain and the microbiome are in constant communication. So what happens in the gut, it's like Vegas, doesn't stay in the gut, goes right to the brain.
Dr. Michelle Perro, founder of GMOScience.org, co-author of What's Making Our Children Sick, and part of the new MDs. Thank you for all you do. It is just a pleasure to chat with you today. Tell us where we can go to find more information.
Oh, yes, Tonya, thank you for having me. If I can speak to one parent or 1,000 or 1,000,000, I will do it every day. So please come visit GMOScience.org. That's my website. The new MDs, there's a tab on there. We're on Rumble, we're on Facebook, and we don't get taken down. We're on YouTube. We're all over the place. And read a book, What's Making Our Children Sick. The new one will be out in 2026. And I hope every parent can just begin. It's a journey, not perfection, and even small changes make a difference.
Well, you are really making a difference for sure, and I thank you so much for that.
Oh, my pleasure, Tonya. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Food Talk for Health with Tonya King. Thanks for joining us. Eat well to be well.
Tune in to our podcast for Food Talk for Health, wherever you get your podcasts from.